Today we will be going to discuss with our Unit 4 revision as well as based on Unit 4 what are the different questions that was been asked in the previous university paper. We will be going to discuss in today's revision class. Okay, is it audible for everyone? Dear students, is it audible for you? Are you able to see my screen? Reply. Yes, you are present. Okay, so it is audible. Let us start with our fourth unit. Okay, in this fourth unit, we will be going to see the what do you mean by input and output. Okay, and these are nothing but your previous year-wise question paper. We will be going to see it. Okay, on based on unit 4, what are the different questions he was asked. Okay, so this I have segregated and I have kept in one place such that it will be useful for you people according to the unit wise. Let us start with our first part. Uh, okay, what do you mean by input and output organization? Okay, so this input and output organization is nothing but here we are going to organize your input devices and output devices which should be connected to your CPU. Okay, for central processing unit you are going to connect your input and output device. How we are going to connect? What are the things you need to consider when you go with the connection of those things? Okay, so let us get into in depth of this particular unit. So first foremost thing is nothing but what are the peripheral devices which we are going to connect. What actually you mean by peripheral device? A peripheral device is nothing but it is nothing but your input and output devices. Okay, the input and output devices can be a monitor like CRT, LCD, and your input device can be a light pen, mouse, touch screen, joystick, or digitizer, or you can have an printer as an output device, storage devices like magnetic tape, magnetic disk, dot matrix. So these are nothing but your different types of peripheral device you are going to interface to your IO organization, input and output. Okay, now let us come with your I input and output interface. Why you require an interface? Interface is a thing which you should consider, you require it. Why? Because I cannot directly communicate with anyone. Okay, why? Because your processor will work with one type of formatting, whereas your your mouse and keyboard will understand different language. So everyone are will be going to have the different language. Okay, so that is the way, that is the case why you need to go with an interface. Okay, voice is not clear. Ma'am, voice is breaking. Okay. Now let me tell whether it is audible. Is it clear now? Voice is clear for you? If the voice is clear, hello, hello. Is my voice is audible? Now it is clear for you people? Shoaib, Muhammad Arma. Okay, fine. So shall we start with our topic? Okay, now why we require an interface? Why? Because yeah, input and output info interface. Based on this one, in exam you may be going to get a question based on this one. Okay, in SAQs you have been asked for 2 to 3 times. Okay, that is nothing but your input output interface. Okay, interface is nothing but a conversion of cell values may be required. Okay, a synchronization mechanism may be needed. So what it means is nothing but whenever you go with the input devices, mouse or keyboard, you're going to mouse or keyboard. Mouse will be going to give the signals in different way. Keyboard will give the signals in different way. Printer will understand the signals in different way. It is having its own way of giving the signals. Okay, so a conversion of one way of signal to another way is required. That can be done by using an input output interface. Okay, next one is what so okay, fine, I will be going the mouse will be going to give the signals in something called an analog signals of 0 volts and 5 volts, which is been easily understandable by your CPU processor. But at the same time I need to synchronize both the things. Why? Because your keyboard or mouse will work with the lesser speed when compared to your CPU. So I require a synchronization. The data transfer rate of peripherals is slow, usually slower than the transfer rate of the CPU. Okay, now what do you mean by data codes and formats in the peripherals differ from the word format of the CPU and memory? So that it will be going to differ. Okay, so that is nothing but your the things with you need to require. Okay, now let us go with the operating modes of your peripherals are different from each other. Okay, the operating modes of the peripherals will also be differ from one point to other point. Okay, so that will be going to differ. Next one is what? Interface. Okay, the special hardware component between the CPU and peripherals I require that will act as an interface. If you are going to see here, this is the block diagram of your I/O interface. If you see here, I'm having an I/O devices, keyboard, display terminal, monitor. You are going to have a printer. You are going to have a magnetic disk. You are going to have a magnetic tape, and this should be interfaced to your processor. Okay, this will be interfaced to your processor by using an interface module, which is nothing but your I/O interface module. So this will be going to convert the language of this language to the processor language and processor language to the I/O device language. It can be an both input and it can be an input device, or it can be an output device, or it can be both input and output device. So that is nothing but your that is the thing which is required by the interface. Interface is nothing but your it is nothing but your it is used to communicate between the processor and the I/O devices. Okay, so when I go with my interface module, I'll be going to have an I/O bus. I/O bus are nothing but we do have 3 I/O buses. One is nothing but your data lines, and the second one is nothing but your address lines, and third one is nothing but your control lines. You know the functionality of data lines. It is used to store the data. Address lines, it is used to carry the addresses. Control lines are nothing but it is used to give the status or control inputs to the I/O devices. Okay. Now when I go with my interface model can be an SCSI or IDE. What do you mean by SCSI? Is nothing but a small computer system interface, or it is an integrated device electronics. Okay. The next one is nothing but your I/O command. We require an I/O commands to give the commands to my interface module. What type of commands it will be going to generate by your I/O module is nothing but control command. What do you mean by control command? Control command is nothing but is you going to control the functionality of your input and output device. Okay, so that you are going to go how you are going to control it. Okay. Next, if you are going to see here, we are going to have the status commands. this will be going to give you the information that what is the status of your things. If I'm going to transmit the data, whether the data has been transmitted or not, is it been lost or whatever the thing it has been happened, whether my processor is ready to accept it or not. So that is nothing but your status commands. Input command is nothing but whenever I want to give the inputs, if suppose keyboard will act as an input device to your processor, so that is nothing but here it will be giving an input command, where printer will be acting as an output device. So your processor will be giving an output command to the interface model. So from the according to interface model, where is the output and what is the input. So if I'm going to interface, your printer will be going to give keyboard will be giving the input to the interface that will be acting as an input command. Okay. From this interface, the same value will be given to the processor, that is nothing but it is act as an output command. So this is nothing but we are related with your I/O model. Now, whenever you go with the I/O bus, generally we are going with the two types of. We are going to have two different types of bus modules or I/O mapping. One is nothing but your isolated isolated I/O, and the second one is nothing but your memory mapped I/O. What do you mean by isolated I/O? Isolated I/O is nothing but if I'm going to have two different spaces for my address spaces for my memory and device, then it is known as an isolated. Isolated is nothing but a differentiated. Okay, I'm going to differentiate. Okay, so I'll be giving some memory location, some slots I'll be going to give for your memory memory addresses, and some slots I'll be going to give for some other memory I'm going to allot it for my input and output device to store the address. So memory addresses and input output device addresses to store, I will be going to take two different memories. Okay, so then that is known as the isolated I/O. When I'm using two different memories, what I'll be doing here, I need to go with the two different types of instructions. Now to read the data or write the data to the I/O devices, we require an instruction known as an in and out instruction. Okay. Whereas if I want to go with the memory operation, then I'll be going with the memory read or write. So based on this one, what are my control lines I'll be going to have? I/O input and output request, memory request, I/O read, I/O write, memory read, memory write. So these are nothing but your different types of control lines which are available for your isolated I/O. Okay. Next one is nothing but your memory mapped I/O. In this memory mapped I/O, what we'll be doing here, we will be using only a single memory location. In this single memory location, we will be going to have a separate few memory addresses will be given to the memory address. Okay, few of the locations will be allotted for your I/O mapping. Okay, so that is the thing of your memory mapped I/O. So here you will be going to have only a single memory. So that is with your memory mapped I/O and isolated I/O. Okay. Now if you are going to see here, I'm having a port A, port B, port C, example of an I/O interface. Control registers, we are going to have status register, you are going to have. Here we are having a timing and control unit and bus buffers. What happened here? Chip select, register selects are available, register select 1 and register select 0 is there. It's I/O read and I/O write bar, and this has been given to the CPU. What happens here? When your chip select is 1, then only your particular I/O interface model is under activate condition. If it is 0, irrespective of my register select, it doesn't work. It comes into the high impedance stage. If your chip select is 1 and your register select is 00, your port A register will be accessed. Okay. Now, if the chip select is 1 and it is the register select is 01, then port B registers will be accessed. So on, if it is 10, then control registers will be accessed. 11 means status registers. So based upon this, 00 means port A, 0 1 means port B, 1 0 means for control registers, 1 means status registers. So it is nothing but a general description. So based on that one, that particular register value will be placed on the internal database. From the internal database, it is been moved out to the external processor. That is nothing but it will be moved to the CPU. Okay. This is nothing but your IO interface model. Now let us based on this one, what are the questions you have been posed in the exam, we'll be going to see. Okay. If you are you able to see my other PPT? Yes. So I have I see the second PPT of mine. Yes, this is nothing but your other PPT. Okay. These are year-wise Unit 4 question papers. Now let us see in May and June 2015 what is the question has been posed on this one. So IO interface, write the functions of an IO interface. You need to describe the functions. What are the functions here? Why you are using this interface? In this interface models, what is the function is nothing but it is going to give the 4 different commands: control command, status command, input command, output command, and it is going to go with the it needs to move the data from this to this. So you need to write this whole details for your IO interface. If you with an example based upon the question, if it is an SAQ, you wind it up here only. If it is an LAQ, then you can add this even this example interface IO interface diagram and explain that particular function. Okay, this is based on this one. Next, in January 2015, explain the need of IO interface. Why we require IO interface? What is the need for an IO interface? The need for an IO interface is nothing but as our devices, okay, will be having its own language of to communicate, okay, which cannot be understandable by the processor. We will be going to require this IO device, which can easily translate the input output language into the CPU language. Okay, that is the one point. And the second point over here is nothing but what is the need is nothing but the speed of operation. As the speed of operation is mismatching. Okay, for this mismatching of the speed of operation, we will be going to use this IO interface device. Okay, that you need to write it down. This is January 2015. Next, in June 2014, we have asked you that what is the difference between an isolated IO map and memory IO. What is the need for an IO interface? Just now I have discussed what is the need for an IO interface. Now let us see that difference between an isolated IO and memory mapped IO. I have told you that isolated IO is nothing but we will be using two different locations, two different bunch of memory. One for the memory address storing and other is for with your IO addresses storing. Okay, so as we are having two different addresses, we will be going to have we will be saying it is an isolated IO. Okay, so both the addresses simplify the same thing, but based upon my IO read and IO write or memory read and memory write, I will be going to write it down those things. Like you see here, here also like same thing. In for IO, we'll be using an input and output instruction for read and write operation, whereas for memory accessing, we'll be using an instruction called move or load instruction to read and write from the memory location. So we are going to have two different memories in the isolated IO, whereas memory mapped IO, only a common memory address, common bus is there for the memory as well as IO. Okay, and there is only one instruction for both the things, move only. Okay, so that is the thing of your memory map right. This you need to write it for the this question. Okay, next June 2014 finish. Next comes to the December 2016. He asked about DMA. We'll be coming in the coming slides. We'll discuss DMA one topic by one topic. Next one is what handshake signals, block diagram, interpriorities. This also we'll see in the coming slides. Mention the ways that the computer bus. This can be used to communicate with memory and I/O. Communicate buses. When we go with DMA, you can understand this one how we are going to do the communication. Explain the methods to priority I/O communication. Okay. In 2017, asynchronous communication interface. Okay, we'll see later on. Okay. So based on I/O interface, what are the questions you have asked? What is the function of an I/O interface? What is the need an I/O interface? Explain the differences between the isolated I/O and memory mapped I/O. So 3 questions we have discussed based on this particular topic. Okay. Now let us go with the next topic of your 4th unit. This is done now. Next come with your asynchronous data transfer. Okay. So whenever we go with the data transfer, whenever I say data communication, a data communication can be of 2 types. One is nothing but your synchronous data communication and other is nothing but your asynchronous data communication. When I say synchronous data communication is nothing but when both the devices are communicating, the speed of operation of both the devices should be same. The clock frequency should be same and then it is nothing but a synchronous type of data transfer. Like for example, all the data transfer occurs simultaneously during the occurrence of a clock pulse. That means that as a clock pulse will be started, directly I will be sending the data irrespective of the thing that whether the receiver is ready to receive or it is ready to do or not. Okay, so that is nothing but a synchronous data transfer. In the synchronous data transfer, you are going to have the common clock pulse will be shared between the 2 things, senders and the source and destination. So I am having a source and I am having a destination. I'll just transfer my signals. I'll just teach or I'll just send the data one by one, and each data will act as a block. I will be creating block. Block is nothing but 8 bits of data together will act as a block, or 16 bits of data together will act as a block. So I'll be sending one block by one block from the source to the destination. So your destination will be going to receive this one block by one block. Okay, once it receives one block by one block, what it is going to do is nothing but receiver will receive it automatically. So your source will always transmit, your destination will always receive. Okay, so this is nothing but a synchronous data transfer. The disadvantage of synchronous data transfer is nothing but your source will never knows that whether the data received by the receiver or not. The destination receives the data or not, it doesn't know. Okay, and at the same time, what happens is nothing but due to some problem, the data may be lost in the channel only. Okay, that also your sender, that is nothing but a sender source will never come to know. That is the 2 disadvantages. The third disadvantage of your synchronous data transfer is nothing but the speed of operation of both the devices should be the same. If the speed of operation is mismatching, then what happens? The data transmission and receiving rate will be mismatching. So due to that one, there will be a loss of data between the channel. Okay, source and destination. So that is the thing of your synchronous data transfer. So that is why we maximum will be preferring asynchronous data transmission. So whenever we go with asynchronous data transmission, what I'll be doing here is nothing but I'll be using both the source and destination will not be working with a common clock pulse. That's the first point. And your source and the destination should not be matching with the same speed of operation. That is the second point. Okay, and the third point is nothing but as in the synchronous we are divided into blocks, in the same way in asynchronous data transfer also we will be going to divide the data into a blocks, and each block I will be appending 2 bits. Okay, 1 bit at the start of the message, that is start of the block, and other will be at the end of the block. At the start of the block, whichever I am going to append it, that will be acting as the start bit. At the end of the block, whichever I am going to append a bit, that is known as the stop bit. Always remember that in asynchronous data transfer, one start bit and one stop bit will be added to your actual data. Okay, always your start bit will be 0 and always your stop bit will be 1. Okay, whenever receiver sees that starting bit is 0, it assumes that this is the start of my data, so it will going to access next data 1 bit by 1 bit by 1 bit. Later on at the end, when it sees a 1, logic 1, then it will be going to say that it thinks that yes, the one block of data I have received properly. So that is the nothing but your asynchronous. Asynchronous data transfer is best suitable whenever both the devices, source and destination, is going to have different communication. That is nothing but it is going to have different communication. Then that is speed of operation. Then we will be going to use this particular thing. Okay, data transfer. Now, whenever we go with an asynchronous data transfer, there are two methods of creating an asynchronous data transfer. One is nothing but your strobe method, and the second one is nothing but your handshake signal. Okay, strobe and handshake signals. Okay. So we'll be using two methods, strobe and handshake signal. Handshake. Let us go with the strobe. Whenever I am going with strobe, the control signals here we are going to have two different types of strobe methods. One is nothing but the source initiated strobe, and the second one is nothing but your destination initiated strobe. Okay, so these are the two different control strobe methods are there, which we are going to follow to transmit the data. So what is the source initiated strobe? If you are going to see, here I am having a source unit, here I am having a destination unit, and this is your data bus where from source unit to destination unit you are going to transfer the data 1 bit by 1 bit. Okay, what's your strobe? As is the source initiated strobe. Okay, so what happened, the source will be going to go with the signal. It will be going to initiate the initiate the signal, strobe signal to the destination part. So what it going to do is nothing but valid data. Okay, we'll be going to the source will be sending a valid data. After sending a valid data, it will be giving a strobe. Okay, it will be giving a strobe input to signal to the destination, informing that I am sending a valid data on the data bus. That is nothing but a strobe. Source initiated strobe. Next one is our destination initiated strobe is nothing but the destination will be going to give the information that now send the data. I am ready to accept the data. That is nothing but a strobe. By destination will be sending the strobe to the source, informing that now I am ready to accept the data, send the data. Now after that one, you are going to the source will be going to send the data. So here step 2 will be your data transmission, step 1 will be your strobe. Whereas in the source initiated strobe, first step is nothing but your data will be transmitted. Later on, strobe will be transmitted. That is nothing but your strobe initiated. Source initiated strobe and destination initiated strobe. Okay. The main disadvantage of this one is nothing but here also your source and destination source doesn't know that whether it has been whether the destination have been received the data or not. It will never comes to know. Okay, for that case, to reduce the disadvantage, we will be going with handshake signal. Okay, so what do you mean by handshake? Handshake is nothing but we are going to share like a shake hand. If I say hi, how are you? What do you say? In with respect to that one, you will be going to reply that I am fine, thank you, madam. That is nothing but your handshake signal. This is known as a handshaking. Okay. The same way, this is handshake signals will be going to use in your communication, that is nothing but your asynchronous data communication. Okay, so in this one, let us go with an handshake signaling. There are two types of handshake part. One is nothing but your source initiated handshake signals, and the second one is nothing but your destination initiated handshake signals. What do you mean by source initiated handshake signals and destination initiated? We'll see by, I'll explain you by using this diagram. Okay, this is nothing but your source initiated. Okay, what happens here? The source unit there, destination unit is there, data bus is there, valid data is there, data accepted. So what you are going to do at first step, valid data you are going to place it on the bus. Okay, so the data will be valid, the data will be there. In that, the valid data, whenever it is going to there, you are going to send the valid data. Your destination will be going to say that data is accepted. It is going to return the reply that the data is accepted. So what actually it is happening is nothing but the source unit. What it does, it places the data on the bus, enables the data valid, enables the data valid. Okay. After that one, what happens? Accepts data from the bus, enable the data accepted. So what happens? Source replacing the data, valid data, destination going to receive the data and says accept, you have been accepted the data. Now disable the data valid, okay, and then disable the data accepted. Okay, again you go to the initial stage, place the data. So this is nothing but your source initiated type of handshake signals. Okay, what is my handshake here? Data accepted. Yes, I am sending the data. Yeah, say okay. I have accepted the data. When I say I'm sending the data, you will say that the data is being accepted. So that is nothing but your source initiated type of handshake signals. Next comes with your destination initiated handshake signals. In the destination initiated, what happens? Your destination will be saying that now I'm ready to accept the data. Okay, then you will be going to send the data. Source will be sending the data. Here in this case, what happens here? Source will send the data. Later on, after accepting the data, the destination will be going to reply that data has been accepted. In this case, what happens here? Source will not send the data first. First, destination will send the data that yes, I am ready to accept the data. Once it sends the data call ready to accept the data, at that instant of time only, after that only, the source will be going to send the valid data on the data bus. Okay, so valid data on the data bus will be placed after the ready for the data is been generated. Once the destination generates the ready for data, the data valid data will be placed on the bus and it will be read by the destination. So this is nothing but your handshake signal generated by your destination initiated one. Okay. So source initiated hand signal and destination initiated handshake signals. Okay. So by this, what happens? Your data will not be able to lose it. Okay. Now let us we'll be going to go with the next concept. One is nothing but we'll see that what are the latest questions have been asked on this topic. Okay, handshake signals and data signals. Okay, so in May and June 2015, any handshake signals, basic three techniques of IO operations, we'll discuss later. Here. What is the disadvantage of transferring the data through strobe control method? How the handshake signals overcomes this disadvantage? Explain it. Okay. So what you'll be doing here? You'll be going to what is the disadvantage of a strobe signal is nothing but your destination will never knows that whether source will never knows that the destination have been received the data or not. That is nothing but your disadvantage of your strobe control. Okay, whereas your handshake signal controlling is nothing but here first you'll do handshake. Okay, data you have sent, I have accepted my data, or please send the data, I'll receive the data. Okay, that is nothing but that those two things you need to write it over here. Okay, in this case, draw the timing diagram of a strobe controller method of IO interface. What is the strobe controller method of IO interface? Here, this timing diagram you need to draw it for this particular question. Okay, source initiated strobe, destination strobe. These are the timing diagrams you are going to draw for this question. Okay, next draw the block diagram of communication interface with. Okay, next question is asked on this topic. Here also not asked. Now, why handshake signal required between the CPU and IO device? This handshake signaling will enable that to have a good communication between the two things, IO devices and processor. Okay, and it will not be going to lose any data. Okay, that is the main advantage of this particular handshake signal. Next question is what? Draw the flow chart for source initiated transfer using the handshake. Okay, source initiated flow chart. This is your flow chart which you are going to draw it for the source initiated flow. Okay, this is the flow chart you are going to draw. Next one is what? This is modes of transfer. Next slide we will be going to discuss that one. That's it on handshake signals. Here also. What are the difference between synchronous and asynchronous data transfer? Just now we have discussed. In the synchronous and asynchronous data transfer, the data which you are going to keep it. Hope everyone are online. Are you? Is it viewable and audible for you people? Okay. What is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous data transfer? In synchronous, both the speed of operation should be same. Okay. In asynchronous, both the devices should not have the same speed of operation. Okay. And the clock frequency can be varied between these both. That is nothing but your asynchronous data transfer. Okay. What do you mean by synchronous? Both will work on the same clock pulse only. Okay, and you are going to send one complete block by data by block data. Whereas in asynchronous, what you will be going to do? You are going to have send it one bit by bit. One start bit and one stop bit. You are going to append it for the complete block for the asynchronous data transfer. Okay, so that is the thing. And explain the block diagram of asynchronous communication interface with the need diagram. We'll see in the coming slides. Okay. Coming to the modes of transfer. Okay, whenever you go with the modes of transfer, coming to the modes of transfer, the data transfer from to and from the peripherals, what are the different modes of transfer we are going to follow? Generally, we do have four different types of modes of transfer. One is nothing but your programmed IO transfer, and the second one is nothing but your initiated IO data transfer, and third one is nothing but your direct memory access or IO transfer. And the next one is nothing but your IO process, input output processor. Okay, so that is these are nothing but your four different actually three only methods mode of transfers are available: programmed IO, memory initiated IO, and DMA direct memory access. So one by one we'll be going to get into the detail of this particular topic. Okay, modes of transport. Coming to the programmed IO transport. If you're going to see here, this is your flow chart for your programmed IO transfer. What it is going to do in the programmed IO, it will be going to read the status register. Okay. After reading the status register, it will be going to check for the flag bit. If the flag bit is 0, then it will be going to go again for the status register. It will read the status register. If the flag bit is 1, then it will be going to read the data register. Once the data register value has been read, it will be transferred the data to the memory. Once the data has been transferred to the memory, the operation is completed or not, we will be going to check. Yes means next it will be going to compile the program. Okay. No means it will be again going back. Again it reads the status register. Again it checks for the flag bit whether it is equal to 0 or 1. If it is 1, then it reads the data register. This data will be transferred to the memory. Then the operation is complete or not, it will be going to check. Now based on this flowchart, let us see the block diagram over here, example of this one. Here I am having a CPU. Here I am having a interface diagram. Okay, in this interface model, this interface model is nothing but consists of two registers. One is data register, and second is nothing but a status register. And there is one flag bit F. And here I am having an IO device. For this IO device, I am going to have the IO bus, data inputs, okay, data valid inputs, and here it is data accepted. Whereas here data bus, address bus, IO read and IO write operation. Okay. First it reads the status register. This status register will give you after reading the status register, you will be going to check the flag bit. Flag bit is 0 or 1. If this flag bit is 1, then the data value from this will be data will be moved to the data register, and this data register will be value will be moved to the CPU memory address. Okay, this will be repeated continuously. This is nothing but your programmed IO part. Okay, so each time if you are going to see that in the disadvantage of this one is nothing but your each time your module requires to check the flag bit each and every time. It needs to read the status register, then it goes to the flag bit checking if it is 0 or 1. Always it does the continuous operation. This is nothing that is nothing but your disadvantage of your programmed IO mode of operation. So that is why we will be going with the interrupt initiated IOs. Let us go with interrupt initiated IOs. After discussing this interrupt initiated IOs, let me take one small example such that you can understand very well what actually you mean by programmed IO and interrupt initiated IO. When I go interrupt initiated IO, you will be going to have non-vectored and vectored type of interrupts. What do you mean by non-vectored? Non-vectored is nothing but your fixed branch address will be there. In vectored is nothing but your interrupt source supplies the branch address. Okay. What actually, why this mode of transfer or all this coming into the picture is nothing but to come with the interrupt concept only. To come with your interrupt concept only. Okay. What actually you mean by interrupts? Interrupts are nothing but here someone is going to disturb the main line of the program code. Okay, so how it has been disturbed is nothing but by creating a interrupting a CPU processor. Thus, whenever it interrupts the CPU, what happens? Any input and output devices interrupts your CPU. The CPU will be going to check, it will be going to go to that particular device. It will ask that what is the service you require. So and so service I require. Based on that service, it will provide the service to that particular input and output device. If so and so service is required or so and so thing I required, if that particular address is been specified by the device only, then that type of interrupt is known as a vectored interrupt. Okay, if suppose you always if that interrupt occurs, then the same type of service needs to provide, then that is known as a non-vectored interrupt source. Okay, so that is the main thing about vectored and non-vectored interrupt source. What is the software consideration? In the software consideration are required input and output routines, software routines for controlling the peripherals and for the transfer of data between the processor and peripherals. We require I/O routines for standard peripherals are provided by the manufacturer like the device drivers, OS and BIOS. I/O routines are usually included within the operating system. It will be available in the operating system only. I/O routines are usually available as a operating system procedure, OS and BIOS function call. Okay. Now let us get into this one and let us explain you one example by taking one small example. Hmm? Generally, I'll go with this example maximum. What actually you mean by interrupt or disturbance? Okay. Now, whenever suppose if I'm taking a class, okay, I'm seriously taking one class. Okay, I'm discussing some topic. Okay, whenever I'm discussing some topic, so what happens here is nothing but if during the discussion of my chapter, if HOD sir comes to the class, okay, so what happens, what I will be going to do, what is my responsibility over there as a processor? Think that I'm a processor. Okay, what I'll be doing, I'll be starting my class, then I'll be going to the sir, HOD sir, and whatever the service he is asking, whatever the question and answer, whatever thing he is asking, I'll be replying, I'll be provide the service, I'll return back to my main program, that is my lecturer, and I'll start the delivering of my lecture where I have stopped my lecture. Okay, this is nothing but how the interrupt is going to happen. The same way. Okay, yes, HOD sir will be acting as an interrupt. Okay, myself will be acting as a processor. Okay, delivering of a lecture is nothing but your main program. Okay, providing a service to the HOD sir is nothing but it is acting as a subroutine program. Okay, so this is nothing but the whole thing will be happen. Okay, so this is nothing but how does the interrupt is going to work. Is it clear with this one? Okay, now whenever I am saying, suppose for example, um, this is related with your interrupts. Okay, in next example I'll explain you what you mean by polling and JC chain example. Okay, come with the priority interrupts. In the priority interrupts, what happens? Identify the source of the interrupt when several sources will request that the service simultaneously. Okay, so if suppose I'm having more than one interrupt is going to occur. Okay, my keyboard, mouse, monitor, printer, everyone are interrupting me, interrupting the processor. Then the processor can provide service only for only one. It cannot provide the service for everyone. So what it does is nothing but it needs to provide the service. For whom it is needs to provide the service at time, what we will be doing here is nothing but we will be going to give the priorities for all the devices. Okay, keyboard will be getting the lowest priority, mouse will be getting the next highest priority, the most highest priority will be a hard disk, magnetic disk will be getting the highest priority. Okay, whenever these are the device, suppose the magnetic disk is going to interrupt you and keyboard is going to interrupt to the processor. Based upon the priority, magnetic disk is having the highest priority. So your processor will provide the first service to the magnetic disk. Later on, it provides the service to the that is nothing but your keyboard. Okay, so that is nothing but your based upon the priority, you are going to provide the services. Okay, so during your device driver installation only, you will be going to specify the priorities for all the input and output devices one by one. We should get the highest priority. Okay. Now, whenever we go with an interrupts, generally we do have two different types of interrupts. One is nothing but your hardware interrupt, and the second one is nothing but your software interrupt. What do you mean by software interrupt? Software interrupts are those interrupts which will be interrupted during the program execution. Like for example, when I am running a program, if I am going to have some function, okay, add function I am going to call. What does your main program is when main program will stop their execution? It goes to the add function, it executes that particular add function and return back to your main program. Okay, so that is something but your one type of software interrupt. And second type of software interrupt is nothing but your runtime errors. Like runtime error is nothing but I have written a program for division operation. Okay, so the division operation will work for all the numbers. If by default, if I give my denominator 0, will my division operation will get it? No. It will fail to produce a result. So in that case, what we will be doing today do is nothing but that is known as an software, that is other way of software interrupts. Okay, one is nothing but the interrupts which we are going to produce it. Those are known as an exceptions. Okay, and the second one is nothing but your interrupts which is been provided by the software. That is nothing but during the execution of the program, that is known as an interrupts. Okay, software interrupts. Okay, that will be raised. Exceptions will be raised during the program executions. Okay, those are nothing but your software interrupts. What do you mean by hardware interrupts? As the name specifies, hardware interrupts are the interrupts which are being generated by the hardware devices. Input and output device will be going to interrupt the processor. Then that particular interrupts are known as the hardware interrupts. Okay. In this, if you are going to see, we are going to have polling interrupts. We are going to have the daisy chain interrupts. We are going to have the parallel priority interrupts. Okay. Let us discuss one by one all these interrupts. Okay. What do you mean by polling interrupts? Polling interrupts is nothing but it is going to get the highest priority source by the software means. One common branch address is used for all the interrupts. Program polls the interrupt source in sequence. The highest priority source is tested first. Polling priority interrupt, if there are many interrupt sources, the time required to poll them can exceed the time available to service the IO device. Okay, so what actually it mean by polling interrupts? Let us take one small example over here. Suppose one of your friends says that he will be going to come to your home by 10 morning 10 o'clock. Okay, now you will be in your home. Okay, okay, as your home will be very big. Okay, assume that your house is very big. Okay, and suddenly there was no power. There is no power in your home. Suddenly there was a power cut at 10 o'clock only. What happens? Will your bell rings? No, it doesn't ring. What happens? Someone will be going, your friend will be going to knock the gate. Okay, will it be audible for you when if you sit in the one of the corner room in your house? If it's a big house, it's not audible. You cannot able to check it. So yeah, you need to visit your particular. You need to provide a service to your friend also over there. So what you will be doing here for every 1 minute or for every off minute, you will be going to go. You'll be going to the gate and you'll be checking that whether your friend has come or not. Okay, then return back for next off minute. Again, you'll go and you'll check that whether your friend have turned up or not. Again, for after off minute, again you'll go and you'll check. Okay, so every time you'll be going and checking each and every time. If there is bell is not there, this is the thing you'll be going to do. So this concept is known as a polling. A polling is nothing but always you will go and you'll check that whether that particular device is interrupting or not. whether that particular device is interrupting or not. The processor always checks that device is interrupting or not. That is known as the polling. Okay. So the disadvantage is nothing but every time after each and every instruction of execution, your processor needs to go there and check that whether interrupt occurs or not. It is wasting its time during that particular thing. Yes or no? So what you will be doing over there? Okay, as there is a no power cut, you will be calling your friend and informing that once you come to my gate, you give a call to me. I will be coming and opening the door or gate. Okay. So what your friend will do? Your friend will come to your home and he will call you. He will give a small ring. Then you can understand. Now you yes, my friend came. At that time you will go and you will open the gate. So this is known as an interrupt. A polling and interrupt are both means the same thing. Polling is nothing but each and every second I'll go and I'll check whether I should provide a service or not. Anyone is interrupting me or not. Whereas interrupts are nothing but here it is like an alarm or bell. Okay, someone wants to interrupt you, they'll provide an alarm or bell. So that is nothing but your interrupting part. Okay, now that is related with your polling and interrupts. Next comes with your hardware interrupts. In the hardware interrupts, we do have daisy chain interrupts and parallel priority interrupts. Comes to your daisy chain interrupt. Very, very important for your final exam. Many times you have posed a question on this daisy chain interrupts. Okay. Now let us take a small block diagram over here. Hope everyone are there online. Okay. Coming to our daisy chain interrupts. How it is going to let us assume that I am connecting three devices. Device 1, device 2 and device 3 is been connected to the CPU processor, central processing unit we have connected. Okay. So what happens here? Whenever there is an interrupt means you always think that there is an interrupt request and interrupt acknowledgement will be coming into the picture. Why? Because it's nothing but uh, each and every time you can't go and you cannot check that gate. Okay, that is why you'll be going to go with the two types of connection: interrupt request and interrupt acknowledgement. If anyone wants a service, he will be first the device will be requesting the processor that I want your service. Based upon your CPU, whether it is free or not, it acknowledges to the particular processor that yes, now I am free, I will be acknowledging you, I will be going to provide the service. Okay, so that is the thing, interrupt request and interrupt acknowledgement will be coming into the picture. Okay, now let us assume what is daisy chain. Okay, I'm having three devices, device 1, device 2 and device 3. Okay, these three devices, what I'll be doing, I'll be going to have the interrupt request from these three devices which is connected to the interrupt request pin of your processor. Okay, and from all the devices, whatever the data is there, that valid data will be going to connect it to the processor. When you go give when you ask for an interrupt request, an interrupt acknowledgement will be sent to the devices. Okay, all these IO devices which are available are connected in chain fashion. Okay, you are going to connect it in the chain fashion. Chain fashion is nothing but your device 1, after that device 2 will be connected, after that device 3 will be connected. It's like a chain pattern. So what happens? Always your device 1 will be getting the service first. Next device 2 will be getting the service for second. Okay, next will be your device 3 will be getting the service. So after going with device 3, then device 1 will be getting the service, device 2 will be getting the service and device 3 will be going to get the service. Okay, so what happens here? Here let us assume that come to a daisy chain here. What happens? Suppose device 2 wants to get a service from your CPU processor. So what happens? Device 2 will be going to give the interrupt request to the CPU. Interrupt request will be given by the device 2. Okay. Once the interrupt request has been given, what happens? Your processor will be going to give the interrupt acknowledgement. Okay. This input of your interrupt acknowledgement is been given as an input to the assign an input to the PI. Okay, that is nothing but your acknowledgement input. So the same thing. Now, as I don't want device one don't want any service, what it does, the same acknowledgement will be passed to the output. So what happens? This one will be transferred to the output one. This will be acting as an input to your device two. So as your device two has been requested for your interrupt, as it has getting the one, what happens here? It will assume that yes, I got a positive acknowledgement from the processor. Once it get the positive acknowledgement from the processor, it gives a valid data. Data to valid data will be transferred to the processor, and it will take the whatever the data it needs to transfer or get the data, whatever the operation it needs to perform, the device 2 will perform that particular thing. Okay. Now, if you are going to assume that the output of this one P naught of device 2 is 0. Why it is 0 is nothing but I don't want to inform them that device 3 wants to get a positive acknowledgement. Why? Because device 2 wants the service, not device 3. If the device 3 wants the service also, first device 2 will be provided service, later on device 3 will be provided service. That is why here you will be getting a 0. 0 means you got a negative acknowledgement for the device 3. So your device 3 will start waiting until and unless your device 2 finishes its service. Once it done with your service, what it does, it will be going to send a 1 to this input of your device 3. So on device 3 will be going to send the output. So on how many devices you are going to connect, it will be connected in a chain fashion. After one device, second device after third device. So on it will be done. It is like a chain process. So that is why it is known as a Desi chaining method. Okay. The same thing has been explained over here. Okay. No interrupt request, fun. If it is interrupt request has been given from the device, then a particular interrupt priority output you will be going to cut it. Whatever the things I have explained, you have given with a small arrangement, priority arrangement. Priority in you will be going to get to it. Okay. If you are going to see a parallel priority, in DC chain, what happens? All the devices are connected in series, and no one is getting the highest priorities or lowest priorities. It is in chain. First device which is connected, that device will get the service first. Next second device, next third device, fourth device. Whereas in the parallel priority, based upon the priority of my interrupts or devices, you are going to specify the priority and you are going to get the service. Now in the Daisy chain, if suppose device 3 wants a service and as well as device 2 wants the service at the same time. So device 2 will be getting the service first, later on device 3 will be getting the service. Okay, so that is the thing it will be happening. Okay, now if you are going to set the priorities, for example, I am having the how many IO devices are connected? 4 IO devices. One is the disk, one is printer, one is reader, and one is keyboard. And in the interrupt register, I am going to write it as 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, this by using an AND gate, it has been given to the priority encoder. Okay, and I am having a mask register, which is nothing but 0, 1, 2, 3 is connected as a mask register. So what happens? The output will be of all these 4 will be getting the output. Out of these 4, which will be getting the highest priority is nothing but based upon this. You have studied priority encoder in the DE subject. Priority encoder is nothing but if I am giving this as my lowest priority and this is my highest priority. If suppose your disk and your keyboard, your reader is going to send an interrupt request. So what happens? What does your priority encoder will do? Out of these two, which is having the highest priority, reader is having the highest priority. So this particular I1 value, reader value, I2 value will be given as an output. Okay. From there, that is nothing but your I2 will be getting the service first. Okay. So and you are going to get the interrupt acknowledgement. I can change my priorities based upon my input things. So parallel priorities, parallelly, if all the devices is going to access, I can generate one priority by one priority, and I will be going to execute the program. This is with respect to your parallel priority. Now let us see what is the initial operation of your ISR and final operation of your ISR. ISR is nothing but your interrupt subroutine programs. What is initial operation? It should be going to clear the lower level of mask register. It is going to clear the lower level of mask register. Next, interrupt status bit has been cleared. Next, save the contents of the processor register and set the interrupt bit to IEN. Next, proceed with the service routine. So you are going to proceed with the service routine. The final operation is what? Clear the interrupt enable, restore the contents of the processor register, clear the bit in the interrupt register belonging to the source that has been in a service, set the lower level bits in the mask register, restore the return address into the PCE and set the IEN. These are nothing but two different steps. What is the first step? As soon as the interrupt occurs, mask register, it is going to clear it. Interrupt status bit, it is going to clear it. At present, main program processor register is there, that you are going to move it to the stack. Then interrupt enable bit will be set. Okay, then it will proceed with the service routine program and provide the service. Once it is done with the service, interrupt enable pin is been cleared. Okay, restore contents of the processor register is been cleared. Okay, restore. Okay, next one is again clear the bits in the interrupt register belonging to the source that has been serviced. Next one is what? Set the lower priority bits in the mask register and return to the PC. Okay, this is related with your priority in priority interrupts. Okay, so next topic will be your DMA. DMA will be your last topic. Okay, that will be going to see, and IO processor is also there, right? IO, CPU, IO communication we have asked. Okay, we are left with only two topics. Give it 10 minutes, we can finish it very, very fast. Okay, what is DMA? Direct memory access. What it is doing, DMA controller takes over the buses to manage the transfer directly between the IO device and the memory. Bus request and grant. It is very, very easy and it is very, very important for the final exam. Damn sure, direct DMA, it will be, he will be asking you in your exam. DMA. Fourth unit, DMA will be there compulsory in the SAQ as well as in the LAQs. So fourth unit. Okay, what is this DMA? Direct memory access. Suppose, for this one, let me give a small example over here. What example I need to give over here? I'm not getting an example over here. Wait for 2 minutes. Can you give me 2 minutes? Suppose small kids are there. Okay, in your home also you may be having small kids. Small kids wants to watch some in your YouTube. They wants to watch some rhymes. Okay, will they will be in a position to turn on that system and everything and run that YouTube? They will not. What they'll do, they'll go to the parents, they request to the parents, please open that YouTube and keep the rhymes, they request. What your parents will do, they'll turn on that YouTube and they'll give you the they'll keep the